Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Sarah here with Furniture Flip by Sarah. In today's video, I'm going to be making over this antique vanity. So I'm going to be doing this custom for a client. So I have a few modifications I need to do first. But let's get into the video and I'll take you through the whole process. To start out, I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the original hardware. So after discussing with the client, we've decided to remove some of the detailing that just doesn't really make sense on this piece. We're going to make it look more symmetrical and modern. So I'm just taking this little piece here and I'm going to shove it underneath the detail and try to hammer it off. Now I'm going to go ahead and use some of my dry decks. This stuff here goes on pink, if I can open this, and then dries white. So I'm just going to put this in all the spots where I ripped this stuff up and anywhere that has any little gouges. To sand this piece, I am going to be restaining the top here, so I do want to strip this down completely. For that, I am going to be using my DeWalt orbital sander, and I have 100 grit sandpaper, so I'll use that first, and then I'll go over with a lighter grit, softer grit, and just smooth everything out. For the rest of it, I'm just going to scuff sand it with my Surf Prep sander. So now I'm about halfway and I'm going to change out my sandpaper because it desperately needs to be switched. But this is how far I got with one sheet of sandpaper. It's got all the original finish off. I'm going to go over it again like I mentioned before with a lighter grit. I'll probably use my Surf Prep on here and just smooth everything out. But it's coming off pretty easy and I'm going to finish up doing the rest. And if you're new to sanding, I am just using my DeWalt orbital sander. This is about $100 at your local home hardware, Lowe's, all that kind of stuff. But I am just using this in circular motions to sand off all of the original stain. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my Surf Prep sander on the remaining of this piece. I'm going to go ahead and sand it down with, I have a few different grits I'm going to work with. So to sand down this area here, I'm going to use some of these rougher grits here, and then to smooth this top out, I'm going to use this grit, which I believe is a 220. I will link these other ones down below because I'm not too sure. I think they're medium and coarse, but if you go onto the Surf Prep website, that they have a conversion chart which converts their medium and coarses, all of their sandpapers to grit, so you can check that out.
And I have my surf prep, sorry I have my mask on, but I have my surf prep hooked up to the sponge pad so I can get into the grooves of this piece here.
I was able to just remove this back plate. There was just a couple screws in the back holding it together, so I'm just going to go ahead and use my orbital and my surf prep sander, to sand that last bit of finish off. Now that the piece was all sanded, I went ahead and used some TSP and a cloth and just cleaned these pieces down completely, and then again just wipe them with some water. I made sure to use some painter's tape. This is frog tape, the yellow wider one. I use this to tape off the edges and the drawers to make sure I get a nice clean finish and to avoid getting any paint on areas I don't want to. To prime this buffet, I'm going to be using Zinsser Bin Shellac Base Primer. This is by far my favorite primer to use. It's going to block any stains or tangents that are going to come up through the wood. Anything that is deep into the wood that you can't even see on the surface that might come through, this will help block it out. You may need to do a few coats depending on what you're covering up, and I am out of my plastic trays for my roller, so I'm using some tin foil. I just placed it in there and kind of molded it to the tray, and this works perfectly. To apply the primer, I'm going to go ahead and use a microfiber roller. I picked these ones up from my local home hardware. I will link them down below. And I'm just using a brush from the dollar store. I find it very hard to clean these, almost impossible. So what I like to do is I will use the brush for a couple pieces and I will store it wrapped up in tin foil in the fridge. And then after a while, I will have to toss it away because it kind of hardens up. But by keeping it in the fridge, it kind of keeps it nice and crisp. If you have used this primer before and have any tips on how to clean it, definitely let me know, but I haven't found any yet. So now that the primer has dried, I ended up doing 2 coats on this piece. I'm going to go ahead and lightly sand it down. I have a 220 grit sandpaper just with a little sanding block here, and I'm just going to lightly sand down the whole piece. I made sure to sand down this whole buffet, any area that I primed, to make sure I get a nice super smooth finish. This helps to allow if there's any little fluffs that got in the primer or any little bristles from the brush. This allows me to sand them out and make sure it's super smooth. I'm going to go ahead and use some water to just wipe down everything. Now I'm just going to take my water and wipe it all down. To paint this buffet, I'm going to go ahead and use Benjamin Moore Advanced line of paint, and I am using the color Chantilly Lace in their semi-gloss finish. In this clip here, making sure to not pour too much paint because this paint really does go a long way. You can always pour the excess paint back in if you need to, but you really don't need a ton of paint. In this clip here, I am starting to paint the piece. I am making sure to get in all the little cracks and nooks with my paintbrush. I am using the extra large Purdy brush. If I can, I will link those down below. And again, I'm also using a microfiber roller. I'm making sure to get in all of the little nooks and details with my brush and then going ahead and rolling everything out. I'm repeating this on the whole buffet, and once I am done this first coat, I'm going to let this sit for 16 hours before I go ahead and do the next coat. Because this paint has a built-in semi-gloss top coat, you need to allow those 16 hours for it to fully dry so that you will get the best finish possible and the best durability. I ended up doing a total of 3 coats on this buffet and 2 coats of primer, so 5 coats total to get a nice super crisp white, and trust me, it was well worth it when you see the final results in the end. Now I am just removing all of the painter's tape I added and getting ready to start staining. To stain the top of this buffet, I'm going to go ahead and use Varathane Ultimate Wood Stain in the color Provincial. My client sent me a photo of her hardwood and she wanted it to complement it, not completely match, but still be in the same tones. So on looking online, this was the closest color to it, but as some of you may know, every wood is different. There's so many different types of wood and they all take stain differently, and because this piece was previously stained and I sanded it down, it's not going to be the same as getting some nice fresh wood from the lumber yard. So I went ahead and did a coat of this, a nice thick coat of the Provincial, and I top coated it, and once it dried I just hated it. It was too orange. It was definitely not what she was going for, and it's not what I was going for. So then I decided to use another color, which I'll insert here. This is a little bit more of like a gray undertone, almost like a bit of a driftwood. So once I added that in, I was really happy with the color. It toned down all of the orange, and I went ahead and added my poly top coat. I am using a satin finish for this, and I will also post it here so you can see the exact one I am using. To apply this top coat, I am just using a sponge brush, and I ended up applying 3 coats total to the top of this piece. So now I am back out in the garage, and I'm going to go ahead and spray the hinges. I went ahead and just cleaned them off, got all the dirt and everything off of them. I'm going to be using my Beauty Tone spray paint. This was my first time using the Beauty Tone spray paint, and I have to say I don't love it. I prefer a Rust-Oleum brand spray paint. I find it holds up a lot better. Enamel Satin White, and I'm going to probably do 2 to 3 coats of this. Paint had dried. It was time to put these hinges back up. I just screwed them back in with the original screws using my DeWalt drill. This came in a set of 2, and this was, I believe, on sale for $200 at the time, so I was really lucky to get it for that price, but I will link it down below for you guys. Because the doors went in a little bit too much, I wanted to create a stopper. I didn't go out and buy like the magnetic stopper pulls or anything. I just thought I would create one. So I cut a little piece of wood and I got a 1.5 inch nail, and I just screwed it right into the corner of this piece. That way when the door closes, it doesn't push in too far. This way it's just right. So here is the final look. My client will be purchasing her own hardware, so I've just left that off. She is going to pick that out herself, and I'm really happy with the way this turned out. The top is beautiful. The wood tone is really nice with this bright white. Let me know what color hardware you guys would go with in the comments down below. Would you go with a gold, a black, maybe even a silver? This piece is definitely super farmhousey, but let me know in the comments down below and I'll show you guys another look. So I was still able to flip this piece for $500 without any hardware on it because my client decided to do that herself. So this was a pretty good flip. I did purchase this piece for $50 off of Facebook Marketplace. And for my staging setup, I just have these studio lights here from Amazon. I have 2 of them, and I believe they were about $60 each. For the final look of this piece, I did end up adding some IKEA knobs that I had. I just thought it looked a little bit more put together, but I will remove them before I pack this up and give it to my customer. Thanks for getting to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next week with another furniture flipping video.